Yeah.
There we are.
Okay.
Hello, Nick. Welcome to the list.
Yeah, that is a weird sign. And it says, I've got a thing in the middle of your face now saying this meeting is being recorded.
Yeah.
And then it says, it asks me in blue, it says, got it or leave meeting. Shall I click got it to get rid of it?
I think so. Otherwise, it'll be a very short conversation.
No, fine.
There we are.
What do you mean, got it? Got it.
There we are.
So what sort of a day?
I've been, I'm busy working on a project to turn this room into a sort of bunk room with 4 different beds in it.
Okay.
Great. Kind of in a sort of nautical themed way. And I've just been making these steps and fitting a wardrobe that I've made for them today. So that's been, I've been very much in the woodworking world today.
Yeah. So
but
what
wishing
room,
I was outside. What's that?
What room are we in?
It's a bedroom in, it's a house that will be a sort of holiday let, but one of the bedrooms is kind of like the feature of the house, really. Yeah, interesting. Nice thing to work on. So that's what I've been doing. And where are you? Let's start with that.
Well, I'm in a small bedroom, second story, looking out over the Salisbury Road of Fordingbridge, looking straight west. So I've got a beautiful view always, dawn, moon, you name it. And I work here. This is my workstation. So it's a desk, window, computer in front of me. That's it. So I can literally work in the greatest of comfort. Swivel chair. I love it. Of course, I can start work early in the morning. And this morning I started at 5:45 because that's when I get up. That's because of my dairy past. It's printed into my system. I can't defuse that or delete it. That's my system. I get up at 5:45. So I went straight into action this morning because part of the thing I'm doing is called the Boundary Project. I think I've bored you about it before. I'll bore you again. And we're coming to the end of it now. I've tackled the history part of it, and I'm now dealing with the geology of this particular parish, the parish where our field is.
So Nick, tell us what the Boundary Project is, because people won't know.
It's a project which is started in 2021, which is the coming of age of the century. So we're 21, and we walked every single within the parish of Artin, and we walked them twice. We wrote down the crop. We then wrote down the yield, which we averaged with discussion with various farmers. And so we know every single field, what it grew that year, how much, the value of it in money, where it was sold, all of it on the world market, but we know which merchants took it. Mm-hmm. And the point of this is to ascertain what was grown in this 4,000 acres of arable land and 1,000 acres of common land. So it's a 5,000 acre parish within a very, very clearly defined boundary. Beautiful boundary, which has got endless historic things about it, which we've made a big thing of. And it's possible to view this parish strangely. It's like a river basin. You can see from these 8 vantage points that we have chosen. You can see the parish from these 8 different points. And spookily, the church spire is in the center of the parish. Mm. So it's almost like an axle. It's like an axle around which we can spin. And so the whole thing has taken on a doomsday survey, if you like, as it was in 1087. And this in 2021 will just be dealing with the same fields, weirdly. We've named the fields, and a lot of the names date back to that time. I've checked that on various maps in various archives. And we, through a Freedom of Information request, were able to, with DEFRA, get all the acreages very, very accurately. So we know the exact acreage of every field. We know with the crop that was in it. We know the yield per acre, and we know the value of that crop. So as in 1087, the Doomsday Survey, which was done by tax collectors. That's the purpose of it, really. Ours is done by enthusiasts. And interestingly, of course, the tax is in reverse now, because the farmers and landowners are being paid a grant, a subsidy, rather than having taxes extracted from them, which is quite an interesting point to make. Amongst many other points which we are going to make and publish, because the thing that we've discovered is that the land is basically underused. If you were to do it in a different way and sell your products direct to customers like you, as we did with our milk, like Maplefield Milk, you would then translate the thing into a massively successful business. And so I think this point needs to be made. So what we're going to finally do is to overlay what we've discovered in 2021 financially and crop-wise, overlay that with a virtual approach, as if you were to do it, selling everything direct to you and you.
Hang on, I think a delivery driver has just arrived at my door.
Okay, pause.
So hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Sorry, mate. All right. There we are. Sorry about that, Nick. Where were we?
Okay. Well, the virtual overlay of the entire parish, which we have these massive maps that are very, very accurate. And we're going to colour in each field so we can visually see, and children can see what crop was grown where, and it'll produce a beautiful mosaic. With overlaying a virtual thing, if you were to change the thing into 40 different farming businesses, instead of currently six number, you have 40 different people allowed access to the land, paying proper rent to the landowner, and you process all the food yourself and produce it ready to eat, as we did with Maplefield Milk, you find an enormously exciting yield, both in money and in nutrients. But the main thing is the return of the fertility to the land while we're doing it, which of course is absent in 2021, totally absent. So naturally that is an exciting thing. And I'm a particular fan of agroforestry. So we would divide the 4,000 acres into 100-acre plots. We call it the plot system. And we subdivide each of the fields in the 100-acre plots into 27-meter wide cropping alleys between new plantings of new trees and hedges. And you know well what that would yield as a hedge, tree hedge. It would have apples, it would have, you know, everything you can possibly imagine as an additional yield, additional crop for the people. So that's what's absorbing me.
As well as giving meaning to people's lives.
Meaning.
And connection, people actually being on the land again and connected.
Yes. You know,
that's...
We forecast that it would increase from 6 people who basically farm it there would be an additional 400 people working on that same land. So you'd imagine it as lots and lots of gardens. You know, that there are basically hundreds and hundreds of gardens, and we would treat them like gardens, because look how we treat our gardens. We treat them with love, don't we?
And imagine the beauty of that. To me, I mean, I immediately think of the beauty just in one parish, the beauty of that, of having all those gardens. I mean, that's a wonderful way to see it. And then imagine that patchwork of gardens connected to every other parish in the county and across the country, and the incredible beauty and the sort of habitat for all kinds of wildlife and creatures, and, you know, just the health of the land.
So
go on.
Well, it translates it into a form of instead of rewilding with an absence of food production, we are actually doing both together, side by side. We forecast that the parish woodland would increase by 12% if we install this system. And that means that you're doing everything towards carbon capture. You're doing much more for your habitats than you could possibly hope to do without them. And you are taking the existing landscape, which I consider to be slightly barren and empty. It's a sort of imposed beauty, which we've learnt behavior from our parents, that is what the countryside looks like because of X, Y, and Z. In actual fact, there is an absence, as Tess, our daughter, pointed out the other day. There's nothing happening, Dad, she said. You know, there's no action, and there aren't any animals either. There's no livestock anymore. So the place is empty, but perceived as beautiful from an area of outstanding natural beauty perspective, which I actually counter with what you immediately said, which was how beautiful that would then look. I mean, an absolute change.
But not just look, would feel and be, because the soil would be alive. Because this is the thing, there's nothing there because the soil is dead, because it's been sprayed with God knows what. And therefore everything on top of that is dead and feels like that. It's a palpable feeling that I now am quite attuned to, because I've been living and lucky enough to be surrounded by organic farmland. And the difference in feeling, as well as the obvious signs of animals and plants that you see, difference in feeling is immense, you know, because it's alive, because the soil is
alive,
and everything else on it benefits from that, of course. And this is it. For me, this is the great crisis that we face. Well, England, Britain, and, you know, looks like most of the developed world, is that we are murdering the soil with you know, industrial agricultural methods, with chemicals,
and pressing it down and squashing it flat. And
so is this whole thing, is this your baby? Tell us how this came about. Did you come up with idea?
I came up with, I thought, well, what would happen if you did a survey of a particular year? Why not 2021? And I just set about it. I managed to get the information from DEFRA, which was like dragging teeth, but I got it. And then I got a friend to help me with who's good with the spreadsheet idea. And so we took the information that we got from DEFRA and made it into spreadsheets, add the names and numbered each field. And then we managed to then, with all the crop data, which I provided, she then ground it into a manageable spreadsheet that will give us information, this money. So we're fairly certain that that will be the outcome and the output of the parish within that year. And so it's a snapshot of how agriculture in modern Britain is being undertaken. And we'll decide what to do about it. I mean, I think it actually is quite an important piece of work, really. And of course, I've gone mental on the question of the history of it and the Neolithic. You know, I mean, it's just that's taken my interest even more than farming. And so the whole thing has got a bit out of hand. And with my new system of dictating to the computer so that it types for me, that means it's much quicker.
Yeah.
And so I've written, you know, nearly 100,000 words on it already, and I only started it in January. So it's very productive, and it's very near tying up into some sort of a thing that one could put in front of a government minister and say, well, look, this is one parish, 2,400 parishes in the British Isles. This is how we forecast it will increase the biodiversity by 12% at least. And we maintain our ability to produce a great deal of food. And actually, the food might nourish you if you're lucky. And we'll have soil fertility for generations to come. Because don't forget, since I've been working, since the 1970s, we have done nothing but destroy that fertility. That's all we've done. We've been eating away at it, eroding it, you know, literally.
You've seen the whole process unfold in your lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but talk a bit more about what it is in you that kind of brought you to this. Where did
I've always, you know, I went to agriculture college in my early 20s. I wanted to make a living in farming. I did various jobs in farming, both here and in America. And then when I returned, I wandered into building, really. And we built the house at Didpid, where we grew up as a family. And then in 2008, we moved to this field that you've seen to undertake that project with milk. And what drives me is the fact that I think it's so fascinating. I can't leave it alone. I mean, I think the fact is that if there's something that could be improved, let's have a look at it and see how we could improve it and how we could, you know, instead of eroding the number of people who work on the land, let's encourage them back into sort of jobs that are, in our case at Maplefield Milk, were well paid. And I mean, I just find that a fascinating project, really. And whilst I'm not doing it at the moment, I'm actually just writing about it and talking about it and thinking about it. And I think that if you can influence just a few people, that's a start. And so perhaps one can. I'm also hoping to be able to talk about it at Maplefield Farm, you know, and have some sort of a study centre there. Well,
so this is the piece of land that you own, that you run the dairy from.
That's right. Yeah. So I think probably that's what drives my interest. What about you? How did you get from carpentry into this, into being a woodsman?
Well, I mean, I came here from London. I went to art college in London, and then I was not, you know, I was kind of struggling, not really wanting to be in the city after I finished college, and I was making a living from woodwork and doing very uncommercial art projects. And I just burnt myself out and had enough. And then I was looking for somewhere to go. And I had a commission to make a bookcase for this beautiful arts and crafts house in North Norfolk.
Okay.
And I spent a summer working on that up here and fell in love with the place. So I thought, well, this is where I'm going to move to.
Okay.
And then I approached the landowner here and asked him if he had anywhere you know, somewhere that I could live and or somewhere that I could work, like a workspace. And he showed me this old derelict forestry building that was on the edge of the woods, which the farm had been using for, you know, storage for sheep pens, or, you know, bits and pieces, basically not really using it. And as soon as I saw it, I just had a profound sense of being at home, and that was it. And I knew this is where I wanted to be. And the landowner, luckily, was a very broad-minded individual, and he was completely fine with it. So I just moved in. It was autumn. It was November, actually. And I thought, well, if I can survive a winter, you know, I'll stay. So I sort of camped out, really, for the first couple of years inside a sort of semi-derelict building, and slowly turned it into a home. But it was the land, it was the place that spoke to me. And it was such a profound feeling of rightness, of like, this is it.
Was it?
And at the same time as me arriving, the farm was being converted then to organic farming, which had been a long struggle with the kind of entrenched thinking of the, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s. But you know, he managed to push it through, and I've basically watched that unfold for 20 years, the process of nature and soil returning to health. And it's been amazing. It's been a privilege to be surrounded by that. And on my small patch here, you know, inevitably the same thing was happening with me. It was like, I feel like what's happened is a kind of re-indigenization process going on with me. I came here, I think, just looking for some meaning, because the world that I left behind didn't have any. It seemed to be dying and lacking any profound meaning. And the land itself and the seasons and the weather, that's where the meaning is. And I really feel quite strongly now, after all this time, that this is what we're all looking for, at least in some way, to feel like we're part of nature again, which of course we are. And the way to that is to be on the land in some capacity, spend time, and not specifically to impose your plans on it, but to listen to it and let it show you what it wants to do. I mean, I don't know how you know, what was your experience when you were dairy farming, and your whole life's experience of being on the land, in terms of the land speaking to you and guiding you, rather than just, you know, imposing it or using it? Because it's a conversation, I've realized. It's a two-way thing.
Well, I think
that's kind of
you
arrogant in itself. Of course, it's conversation, and it's maybe mostly coming from nature, but we haven't been listening. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the 4 acres was originally, you know, has not been ploughed in living memory. We can't find it was last ploughed. So the 4 acres in an Iraq field surrounded by tree hedges, which you remember. And so it was a pasture of great antiquity anyway, although it had been grazed and they'd used artificial fertilizer on it up until 2008 when we took over. So that all stopped. And we noticed the species change very, very quickly. The ryegrass is diminished, and the cocksfoot and the fescue and the clover came back. Amazingly, the clover was there, but it was subdued. So the dairy cows obviously improved on that, because we made sure that they didn't stay anywhere too long, and moved them around, and we had chickens as well on the move, and we had pigs on the move on the other side. So I think I mean, listening to it, I suppose I did. I mean, I was hoping that I didn't disturb it, that it would just redevelop and grow and improve with what we were doing to it. And we were taking off what we needed, but hopefully not too greedily. And on the veg side, which is about 1/4 of an acre of it, there we are really getting excited about no dig and deep mulch, which I told you before. And that is such a success because we don't do anything. We just plant through the mulch. And this year we're going to mow the hay, cut the grass because we're going to have some campers, and we're going to pick that grass up with a machine and leave it in heaps where we want it for continuous mulch. So we shall have more than enough mulch for the whole season. So that's an improvement this year. Masses of mulch that we're going to layer with comfrey. So we've got plenty of fibre and we've got the carbon nitrogen ratio we hope about right. So I'm listening. I think I'm doing as little as possible. Yeah, that's the thing. I think to allow it to carry on, because I mean you don't do anything to yours. You're very much I can't remember the name of it, but it's called, begins with P, like a forest law. Permaculture. Yeah. You don't do much to it, do you?
No, I'm very much in the no dig space too. I mean, I've realized you just don't want to disturb the soil if you can help it.
There's no need.
The soil is all, it's connected. It's in terms of the way the water moves through it. It does everything better if it's not disturbed. Obviously, there has to be a little bit when you're pulling things up, but if you minimize that, I'm doing a lot of experimenting with wood chip because I've got a source from a friend of mine who's a tree surgeon.
Yeah.
And even though it probably takes from the soil initially, my feeling
a little bit.
Long term, it's going to be amazing. And and it's free and it suppresses.
Well, that's it.
And if you
it's
can
an abundant source.
Yeah, and if you can mix in some mowings and around the plants where they are, and obviously like you, I go down to where the existing soil is to plant.
Yes.
And then so you're into the kind of living soil with the roots.
Yeah.
And then the wood chip keeps everything else down and introduces that whole fungal network.
This is right.
Here's the amazing thing. Here's the amazing thing for me with the wood chip, especially here, because we're very different here in East Anglia to where you are.
Yeah.
It's dry, and we had such a hot, dry summer last year.
Didn't
the only thing that kept all my plants happy was the fact that the wood chip holds
the
them
mulch.
It kept them alive, and I wasn't watering.
Yeah.
And this was probably one of the driest, hottest summers we've had.
I think so.
To me, that was a wonderful. It soaks in the water when it rains.
Yeah.
And it insulates and it keeps it in there.
Yeah.
And it's always damp, even in the driest part of the summer. And the worms loved it. The worms just like travel from miles around to get involved. Wood chip.
I'm from Norwich.
Yeah, they do.
The thing is, we did not. I've got a group of us now working on this no dig thing. Well, it's up to 5 families this year, so we're excited. We've got plenty of labour, and we did not water last year. That was it. Everybody thought, no, that's never going to work. So we were all sort of, what's going to happen? We did not water, and we had crops. There were crops that were not good, but as you say, they lit, and we didn't water a thing. Now this year, I'm not going to be quite so extreme. I am actually going to water if it, sparingly.
Well, the thing is, now you've done the experiment, so you know that actually they will survive if you miss some watering, and that you don't need to use as much water. And obviously you're following the weather. If there's enough rain coming down, you won't need to water it at all.
No. So I think we'll be a bit more measured this year. We've taken it to one extreme last year, and this year we'll add things to it. And we're increasing the depth of the mulch, which is amazing. I mean, you just go with your dibber through the mulch. In goes, we grow everything in plugs,
right,
which are matched to the size of the dibber. In it goes, job done. Water them in, I think. And then that's it. I mean, it's just so wonderful.
No weeding. It's so simple, right?
So simple.
Of course, every year your soil is getting stronger, healthier.
Yeah, definitely.
And every year the plants will be happier.
Yeah. And all the detritus, everything we cut off, everything that's pulled up and no good, we leave, and it goes to the next lot of mulch. So nothing's taken away. And I just think it feels great, it really does. Of course, we expend labor in sewing the plugs and doing that artificially in the polytunnel, but it means we can do it in advance of the season. So we've been doing it in February when it was horribly cold. And so now they're ready and we can start planting them this weekend. But you only expend that amount of effort then, and it's a very quick transplant, job's done.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and also it's an exchange as well. It's a bit of labor, but that labor, if it's done in the right way, as in approached with the right attitude and circumstance, say, it's pleasure. And
it is pleasure.
Good for you. It's healthy.
It's lovely.
Getting your hands in the soil, you're outside, your feet, feet on the ground. Throw away those wellies, get barefoot, so you're actually connected electrically to the ground. And it's filling your body. Well, really.
Yeah.
This is something I'm getting into now is, you've probably seen this in your life. When animals are unwell, they lie down on the ground.
Yeah.
And if you've ever laid down on the ground and noticed your own feelings, sensations in the body, it's incredibly nourishing. And that's because there is an electrical, we're subtly electrically driven. Our cells are electrical, our bodies are electrical. And the earth is the earth, the electrical earth.
The earth.
It is quite well. Your house has got a rod of copper
in the
ground to earth the system. We are exactly the same. We need to sort of to reset and correct our functioning. And we're walking around in plastic shoes, in plastic clothes, separate from it. And I think a massive part of the kind of explosion in sort of disease and chronic disease is partly that we're not earthing enough, as well as filling ourselves with poisons and ourselves with toxins. But it's a huge part of well-being that I'm quite excited about now is kind of reintroducing people to just simple things like walking on the grass barefoot or lying on the ground as much as you can
lying on the ground,
all year round if possible.
That.
You get it, everyone knows it. When you go to the sea and you walk on the beach,
you feel that lovely beach,
how relaxing and nourishing that is. That's partly the connection.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I went on a course with a friend of mine for apple grafting about a couple of weeks ago, and we learned absolutely everything. And tomorrow is the day when I'm going to do my grafting. I cut my scion wood about a month ago. It's in the fridge, all labelled. This is what I wanted to show you. Do you know the business of collecting your rootstock? You buy it, don't you? You buy an M25 rootstock.
Yeah.
Or you can.
Yeah.
But I know how to produce my own. If you can see that, can you see that? Or is it too difficult?
Hold it a bit higher. A bit higher.
There?
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
Now, well, now you can see that the object thing is to coppice the M25 rootstock, right? Which is just an apple stuck in the ground. It could be a pippin, it could be anything. It happens to be M25, this one. Now, I then earthed it up as per this drawing in the autumn, and I thought, is that going to work? I put a chicken feeder plastic thing around it to protect it, and I filled it up with compost. Thought it'll rot, it'll die. Not a bit of it. I've got about 6 rooted pieces, which, and I just put the seed in, pull them off. There's your M25. Then I should graft on the top of that and pot it up, label it, and send it up to Suffolk. Don't you think that's exciting?
I do. I've been doing exactly the same thing here.
Have you managed to do that?
Well, I've just done it in the autumn, just beginning. So I've done it I've got a pear tree that was already, now this is a similar experiment to see. The pear tree already sent up a load of suckers from the rootstock anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
With that one, I've earthed it up to see if they will then root.
Yeah.
And I can just snip them off. And then I've cut down another apple tree right down and earth that one up. So we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll work.
And I've done it. I've also tried it with a hazel. I'm making a log-walled garden, which is a thing we'll have to talk about, which is very exciting. But in there was a hazel tree growing, and I've cut it right down. And again, earthing it up for the same reason, to get some hazel rootstock. So
you think you will? You'll be able to pull off a hazel. I'm
going to try it.
I'm
going to try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's super exciting because we'll get on to something
really
that I know you'll want to talk about, because I have up here at the top of the field, I have a tiny strip of woodland which I call Land Rover Wood. And the reason is when I moved here from London nearly 20 years ago, I was growing trees from seeds from all the parks and gardens in London on my roof terrace in Bow, which was probably the most industrial place I've ever lived. And when it came time to move, I put all my little trees on the roof rack of my Land Rover that I had at the time. Drove them to Norfolk. So this tiny little wood moved down the M11. And then I planted them. And now there's a wood there, 20 years.
Fantastic.
But part of that is I put in a load of apple pips. And I've probably got 8 or 9 trees that grew from pips. And I would say 7 of them have delicious apples.
Well,
which potentially
I think
could be new varieties because they're pippins. So I would like to...
isn't that fascinating?
It is. And I'd like to... part of the reason for the grafting, for the rootstocks, is I want to now graft some of the ones, particularly one, a really small one, which is delicious. And I'm worried because of where it is that it's not going to survive. So I want to, propagate it before it disappears. But you'll talk about, because you've been getting a bit excited about pips as well, haven't you?
Absolutely mental. I've got a group.
Tell us what you've been doing.
Well, as a group, we've been collecting every single pip we can get hold of, both from supermarkets, from anywhere we can, and sowing them and getting success, probably 30 to 50% success, I would say. So all of those are potentially rootstock, because why not? Or allow them to grow on and become perhaps, as you say, the next most delicious apple ever found. And I think we're going to just continue with that, because if you think about this call for agroforestry across Britain on the scale that we propose in this one parish of Martin, then all of those tree hedges have got to be generated from somewhere. And they might as well be generated locally, I suggest, so that you have a mixture of crab apples and you have a mixture of pippins and anything you can get hold of, because it would be far too expensive to buy ready-made grafted apples. Yeah. There's £40 each. It's ridiculous. So I think you'd have to do it yourself, and I think you could do it yourself. And equally, you could, each parish could then flourish with its own cross-pollinated, as it always used to. And that's where the Bramley came from. That's where the Crispin came from. That's where the Blenheim Orange came from. You know what I mean? So all we're doing is continuing that, which has been forgotten because we've imported everything from South Africa. And so I'm excited by that. And what I'm going to do with the grafting, if I'm successful at it, I'm going to have several different efforts on one tree, so that I can see what's happening.
Yeah. So you see,
which is again not new.
If you think this, which I know you have, if you think this through, if you imagine all the hedgerows in a parish like yours,
in a parish
full of fruit trees, that, you plant them and then you allow them to grow, and then when they produce fruit, you pick out the ones that are any good, you keep those, you mark those out, and then lay your hedge. So all the crabs and the ones that are not particularly flavorful, you lay those with the rest of the hawthorn, the blackthorn, whatever else you put in there. And then you have this wonderful hedge. The crabs that you're not saving as fruit trees will be great pollinators, or
fabulous pollinators,
jam making fruit or whatever, when they do, if you do
juicing anything.
All of it. But then you have all these fruit trees growing. And then, as you're saying, when you've got hundreds of different apples in one parish, all that cross-pollination, will be producing potentially thousands more varieties.
Thousands, absolutely. I know.
But and then
and so on and so on.
Doing that with the bullis and the the plums and the with everything, with all the fruits that will make
everything.
Throw them in there. Why not?
Well, absolutely, because you need a set of trees, a variety of things, and you need an awful lot of them to do what we're proposing across the country. And so you might as well do that locally. And I believe at the time of the Enclosure Acts, in our case, it was 1770 when our field was enclosed. If you look at the species within the hedge, they're all local. They were all probably abundant on Martin Down and on the down that they enclosed, which was common land. They pulled up these saplings of fogwood, prunus, hawthorn, you name it, crabapple, shoved them into this straight line, healed them in. That's your hedge. They didn't buy them from a nurseryman in Suffolk.
No.
Why would they?
No.
So it was done locally, and it would be done again locally within your own parish. And look at the labour it would take up. It would produce a lot of jobs, meaningful jobs. So I'm excited by the it's not just something that is I can't think of the word, but it's not just a kind of dream world of what might be. This is backed up by solid business finance. This is what you could expect from X number of yards of hedge, and some of it, as you said, will be crab, and some of it will be delicious. And what isn't delicious, you just leave. It's a benefit to the wild creatures, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Or the fertility of the soil drops off.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think it's deeply exciting. Really.
You see, again, to me, it's this beauty is a big part.
Well, of course it is, and you immediately hit on that, which of course is not the first thing people say. It's
the feeling of walking down a lane with hedges like we're describing now in the spring when the blossom is festooning the hedgerow, you know, and before the buds break of the leaves. That, and then the whole cycle of that into the autumn when you're walking down the lane and the trees are hanging with fruit. And you know,
and
just
the rose hips, the haws,
all of it. The hips and the haws, indeed.
Yeah. What are we missing? You know, this is the thing. If you begin to tramp about endlessly, you think, what are we missing? What are we doing? Why are we not? As humans, we've always been extremely diligent until 100 years ago, perhaps, not even that, maybe 70 years ago. And we've not been as avaricious in the countryside as we are now. And we used to be numerous. I mean, I think probably I'm talking to 31 different farmers now across Britain. I've won their trust, and they don't think I'm after something, and I'm not trying to tell them anything. So talk to me on a regular basis. They sort of offload now a bit. And I think some of them are saying, well, you know, they can remember on their particular farm in the 60s, 1960s, there were perhaps 10 or 12 people working the farm, a 600-acre farm. And now there's one. So you know that, I know that, but I mean, it's quite extraordinary that the countryside has, even during the Industrial Revolution, of course, it was depopulating rapidly because of famine and because of misery and because of enclosure. But it's continued, hasn't it? It's continued.
Yeah,
and we're losing all those meaningful jobs, and that's
a big part of it as well, isn't it? It's the repopulation of meaningful existence in the countryside as well, which is just as important as everything else we're talking about. And I feel like a healthy countryside full of fulfilling lives, people with fulfilling lives, is a really strong and resilient thing for the nation. It's like the natural immunity of the nation is in those people in the countryside. You know,
the
and
immunity of the nation.
When the city kind of has its new ideas and changes all the time. But what it needs is that foundation of culture in the countryside that slowly rolls along with the seasons and underpins
and maintains itself. And
I feel like this is like the health of a place in terms of culture and people. And it's bringing that back, and it comes from the soil. It's from the soil up. You know, I really believe that. So not only
it's like a reservoir.
Yes, a reservoir,
isn't it? A reservoir of well-being and
health
and purpose. It's a reservoir of purpose.
Yeah,
which is long-lived because of the way it's set up. The seasons, you know, it's dictated to by physically. The soil is here, not here. You know what I mean? It's physically dictated to and set out, and we're just not bothering with it really. If you begin to think about what we've discovered, you know, it's not being bothered with. it looks like the national asset of your parish and mine is being neglected. Now, what economist would say that you just leave your assets, your natural assets, and you don't bother with them? It's mental. It's almost probably criminal. It's probably criminal.
It is, because it's also,
I guess it is.
You know, everything we're facing that's kind of critical, that's sort of threatening our very existence, is based in this forgotten relationship. You see, for me, it's forgotten. It's forgotten.
It is forgotten. Recently forgotten.
We've gone from our bodies into our heads. We've actually disconnected from our own bodies and the body of the earth. But what I would add to what you're saying is that I feel like it's coming back, because you know, people like yourself, like the life that I've lived for the last 20 years, we're remembering, actually reconnecting. And there's definitely a movement. I don't know how it is where you are, but
I think there is.
There's an interest in regenerative farming, and you know, the organic thing is slowly, it's kind of working, but it's full of its problems in terms of pricing and selling and all of that. But in, you know, the principle of looking after the soil, I think, is reviving quite rapidly at this time, which can only be a good thing, you know.
I think so. I think I notice that there is a movement, which, I mean, for example, the thing that I have subscribed to and helped with since it began 15 years ago, the campaign for real farming. And it's Oxford Real Farming Conference once a year in January, has gone from when I first started there, about 100 delegates, to 900 delegates. You know, it's stuffed to the ceiling with people from all over the country looking for meaning and saying, well, let's find out about this. This seems mental. We're neglecting our very, you know, the top 6 inches of soil upon which we live. And so I think you're right. And whether it, you know, I'm anxious that it's not going to be, you know, it's not fast enough, but all I can do is talk to one person who talks to another person who talks to you, who talks to someone. That's the only thing we can do, really.
Yeah, and
I think to give examples. You are.
Yeah. Well, and also it's felt. It's when the life you're living is making you unwell, when the things you're eating have no flavor and are making you unwell. When all of that is going on, eventually, you know, it comes to each individual, not everybody, but, you know, it slowly filters through that maybe this isn't the right way, or somebody gets to try something that was grown in a different way and taste it, you know, actually taste what a tomato is supposed to be like, or a potato, or an apple, or whatever it is. And I feel like it's rising up. You know, it is like the soil. If the soil gets revived and looked after and really left alone, because it knows what to do, obviously. And I feel like that grows through everything and reaches culture and people at the sort of top of the tree. So, you know, for me, it's like, take care of the roots and the soil, and everything else will follow from that. Because it's feeding us, and we are the creators of the culture, of the politics, of the economics. So it's come down to that for me. It's put the soil first, and everything else that follows will be good. And that's all we can do. You know, as individuals, is look after our little tiny patch. And between us all, you know, there's a network of, it's mycelial. There's lots of patches and people doing things.
There's an old presenter who was one of the first people on Gardener's World. Gardener's Question Time on Radio 4. And his name was Bill Sowerbutts. Bill Sowerbutts, okay. Roughly, I think it was, I suppose I was getting interested in it, probably 1970, something like that. I'd have been 20. And he always had a very northern accent. I think he was from Manchester, probably. And he said, well, of course, the answer lies in the soil. And everyone laughed like a drain and thought, what an old peasant, the bumpkin. Well, where does the answer lie?
Exactly.
It's perfect. The answer lies in the soil. That's all you have to think about. Yeah. And look at a forest. That hasn't been sprayed with anything. It's never been fertilized with anything. And it grows a beech that's 200 years old.
Oh, here's the thing.
The soil's no deeper than that.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I've been doing that you might be interested in. Because I'm also, not only am I surrounded by organic farmland, but about 100 yards away is an ancient woodland, which has been woodland since the Ice Age. So what I've been doing is going in there and scraping up a bit of leaf mold off the forest floor, and just putting a little pinch of it into my beds, adding a bit, seeding the soil with the millions and billions of microorganisms and
spores and
all of it.
Good idea.
Bacteria, the virus, all those things that live in there. Yeah. Because it's basically just like starting it off. You just drop that.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. It's the starter.
It's going to spread. Yeah. Yeah. So that's been something.
That's interesting.
I'm quite excited about. It's not something I could measure or prove, but I know if everybody just took a little pinch of soil, and you only need a pinch, because one pinch has millions of organisms.
Yeah.
And just drop it in your in your raised bed, and let it get on with it. Yeah.
And don't add anything else to try and improve it, because that will not improve it. No chemicals, nothing.
No. As well as something I do, and I don't know if you've got there yet with your patch of. Have you got your composting toilet yet? But our own manure is.
Yes, we have. Yeah, no, we have. Fantastic. We've got a composting toilet, and we're going to build more. We had to be careful because they were criticizing us for the phosphate disposal of our campsite, and so they frowned upon anything that was, just a composting loop. But we've overcome that now, so we're full steam ahead. Yeah. But I think that the no-dig is, I've always been interested in it, but I've never really had time to sort of experiment with it. We've got 3 different areas on the field under slightly different forms of cover. And we'll see what is best. I think probably the layer of we wilt the hay, the grass. We don't put it on as green mowings. So we wilt it for a few days, then pick it up, and then mix that with comfrey leaves, which you're well familiar with. And it's important to have the right mix of carbon and nitrogen within your compost. And then, it's just a compost in situ, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would say, if you can get any wood chip, even just adding in a handful, so you've got that kind of fungal activity as well. I think that's the only thing for me to complete it that just adds, if you don't mind a few little lumps of wood here and there.
No, I don't mind.
Then I think that would it would improve it even more.
I must try and get some. Yeah, I will.
But you could just have, find out who your nearest tree surgeon is. Say, dump it in the corner of the field there.
Yeah.
Whenever you've got a
and leave it.
And just leave it. And and if you leave it for a couple of years and then just add a handful of that in.
Yeah.
Great.
Good idea. Yeah. The other thing we're experimenting with is flax.
Oh yeah.
This is the second year running. We're going to grow a patch of flax in order to harvest the fiber and to make it into a shirt.
Oh, fantastic.
Because I mean, I think that's the most interesting thing. I mean, the idea of growing your own fiber, your own ropes, your own sailcloth is just extraordinary, isn't it? And yet that's a thing we've completely lost in this country. We've completely forgotten about it. So
yeah, flax, nettle, and hemp. I mean, we need to legalize hemp again, because these are
do. Of course we do.
Fibers that, you know.
Yes.
Fantastic plants that are useful. Yeah.
Well, they will be more useful, won't they? I mean, you know, you can even use linen, flax fiber in carbon fiber parts. There's a bicycle that's made with its forks made of linen fiber.
Yeah.
Think of that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
No, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I like that thing of combining these ancient technologies with like the cutting edge ones, because that's the way to
Isn't
go,
that lovely?
Yeah.
Of course it is. Yeah, it really is. So are you selling any plants from your
well, I mean, my plan was,
you were going to sell things, weren't you?
Yeah, I've got a few trickling out, but it's been weird because this year that was my intention, was right, get a nursery going, and I took a load of cuttings and sowed a lot of seeds. I had sort of moderate success with the seeds. It was a really difficult year with the dry, and
well, it was.
And I was learning as I went, obviously.
Yeah.
But then suddenly there's been all this work, the woodworking, and because of the sort of economic situation and inflation, I've just needed to work. So I've had no time for the nursery.
Okay. So how much
like,
of the work...
because I've had to follow the work just to survive, really. It's sort of been put on hold. In fact, I've been frantically planting out a lot of the cuttings I took just here, because they were ready to kind of be shipped as bare root in the winter, but I had no time to do it. So, you know, they never go to waste because I just put them in the ground here. But I'm wondering now if I need to partner up with somebody, find someone who wants to do it. And sort of, you know, so I can have that going on and be doing, you know, my woodworking and other things.
So how far afield?
I'm still trying to work out how to make it work as a whole.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to be deriving all of my income from the land, and
of course you would.
Spending as much time as I can here and outside. You know, the other thing is I just want to be outside.
Yeah, right, of course.
In it and on it.
So I agree with you. I love being outside. But how far afield do you have to go for your woodwork?
Well, you know, it's kind of all over the place around here. So up to kind of, I don't know, 40 minutes is probably my maximum.
Yeah, okay, well, that's all right.
Yeah, so it's all local. I mean, you know, and it's you know, it's fascinating. I like making things as well. It's a big part of who I am. So it just, and at the moment, it's just,
it distracts you from your.
It pays better.
You're lucky to have that skill to be able to call on.
Yeah, well, this is it. I fought it, you know, I fought it for years because I always thought I was an artist, but I just made a living as a woodworker. And it's funny, this last time around, I've sort of come and gone from it. This last time around, I've embraced it and realized you've been doing this for years now. It's a craft, and you've been learning craft.
It really is.
It's a noble craft. And so I'm at this place where I'd like to kind of master it as much as I can in my lifetime, you know. And there's a lot of satisfaction in it as well from doing it well, you know.
No, I should think so. I think you're right.
And it
A
fits right
noble
in with the woods
craft.
here anyway, because you know, I can make things using the
Yeah,
wood from here.
yeah,
There's an
yeah,
overlap. It's very, you know, it's very compatible.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm just trying to work out how to blend it all together, how to do my
yeah.
creative things, my making,
Well,
land,
yeah.
you know, the whole thing.
Mm,
Getting
mm,
people to come here and connect is a sort of
yeah.
future thing I want to do more of, you know, giving
Mm,
people the experience of
yeah, yeah,
being on the land in a way that kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
unites it, hopefully for them.
yeah. Quite ignites it. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, well, it looks like the sky is clearing. We're still getting this north wind, which is making it cold, frost
Keeping it
last night.
cool. Yeah.
So luckily I put the seed potatoes inside, you know, that was a thinking ahead. And on Saturday, we're going to plant the onions,
Yeah.
all of them,
I've got sets to go in.
straight into the ground. Voila.
Mhm.
And there'll be a group of us. It'll be a bit of fun.
Yeah.
I like doing things with people. I don't want
Yeah.
to do
No,
anything on my own. You
yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, I see that. I think
Yeah.
you're the right person. You're a great spokesperson for it as well. I think I'm sort of seeing there needs to be a program about this boundary project with you on it.
Yeah.
That's what I see would be a wonderful thing, and there'd be a lot of interest. That probably for me is the best way for you to broadcast this message is to
It might be.
you
Yeah.
know get on to the BBC to make a little series about
Yeah.
this, and you can you can get into
Well,
the historical you know it could
mm,
go into the history of the countryside as well
yeah.
as you know modern farming and the regenerative
Well,
revival and the organic thing. It could
yeah.
touch on all of that from
Yeah.
this one place. You know, I think there'd be a massive interest in that, and that would be a
Well,
wonderful way to spread the seed of this
yeah.
idea to other parishes around the country.
I mean, one of the things we've discovered is the proportion of arable land, that's arable land that's cultivated each year for crops, that's arable land, right? Proportion to the common land, which is permanent pasture, okay? In this particular case, it happens to be 4,000 acres of arable against 1,000 acres of permanent pasture of common land, which is very, very unusual these days, okay? So what used to happen in 1087 was that the clever people who set it all out made sure that the downs were covered in sheep, and the sheep would be eating these grasses, which were quite inaccessible to anyone else. They then brought the sheep home at night and they folded them onto the arable land. So the sheep would shit all night.
Yeah.
And then they would go back to the down and eat all day. And that's where the fertility came. Nowhere else did it come from.
Yeah.
And that was the fertility. Then they grow their crops.
It's creating amazing habitat on the down.
Of course.
And it's medicating, feeding the health of the sheep because they're eating all these wild plants mixed into their diet. And all of that goodness then gets spread all over the arable field.
Yeah.
It's such a clever way.
It's so clever. And of course, what it then makes you realize is that the value of the sheep, there has no other value other than as a mobile daily dung barrow. It walks its way back and it walks its way back. And the whole thing, if you could get any other value from it, such as its wool or maybe some meat, all well and good. But really, the point of a sheep is its manure, and always has been up until the beginning of the industrial fertilizers, perhaps around 1900, 1890, something like that, when the Haber-Bosch process was invented. Up until then, that's the only source of fertility there was. Mixed farming. Am I right?
Yeah.
Same in Suffolk, same in Wiltshire. And so we may have to return to that. And with your arable strips of between the agroforestry, of course you can do that, because you can have a strip which is used for manure, transferred to the strip next door, which is used for potatoes.
Well, and also,
so the sheep is still important.
Yeah, and also we can add to that with our nitrogen fixing plants, and you put those in your strip of trees. So it's all kind of doing the same thing, you know. It's all
it is, yeah.
It's just,
and that would be the only source of fertility, and that's all you need, and that's all that there ever was from 1087 until 1901 or whenever it changed. But it's a long time. And since that time, you can plot the deterioration of the fertility quite staggeringly, so that now, you know, it would be impossible to grow crops on some of our land within the parish without artificial fertilizer. There's just nothing there. Well, and the same in Suffolk.
This system that you're talking about, it's a whole form thing. It's providing habitat for wildlife. It's providing a wider range of habitats for all the kind of plants and animals. It's preventing erosion. It's holding water, slowing it down so you don't get the floods. It's feeding itself. It's nourishing us. It's creating beauty. It's the whole thing. It's so simple, isn't it? You know,
it is so simple, and so continuous, and it's providing jobs. It's providing occupations, in meaningful, interesting occupations,
healthy.
And I think it's got to be one of the answers to the future of agriculture, I think. But precious few people are really thinking that way.
I don't know. I think it's changing. And I think that's why it's important for you to get this idea out, you know, for people to be communicating these ideas. And spread it, because I think there's more interest in it than you might think, and more of a feeling or more of a hunger, shall we say. You know, the worse things get, the more exciting and attractive the good ideas are. And when the right idea appears and there's a whole population of people who've had enough, they'll jump on it. You know, that's what's going to happen. So, you know, I feel it's funny that things have got really hard for us all, but I feel like this year is somehow different. There's a little bit of a feeling of goodness returning somehow, like as dark as it's getting, the potential now for the good to rise up strongly seems more than ever to me. And you know,
because perhaps
right now this is spring and it's all with us. You know, I'm jumping on.
It could be because it's more of a contrast. Maybe more contrast is what's needed. And that is going to happen, I think, inevitably.
It is happening.
So we have to come up with answers.
It's already happening now.
Well, I think I may have coming to the end of my voice is beginning to go funny.
That's
and I think
end it. And you're disappearing into the gloom.
I'm losing the light. And tomorrow I'm quite nervous about my grafting day, because I'm going to spend the whole day grafting onto my rootstock that I've just shown you. And I've not done it enough to be totally confident. You know what I mean? But I've got my tape, and I've got my compound, and my paintbrush.
Save one for me. Do a graft for me, and I'll put it here, and I'll bring you something in return. I
will definitely do that. I will graft you a crispin, which is my favorite apple of the moment. A crispin. And they used to be widely available in Britain, apparently. I've never bought a crispin, have you?
Nope.
No. It's a beautiful green apple about that size. Delicious.
So what it's green, is it?
It's green.
Flavour?
Sort of appley.
Come on, is it like a Granny Smith, or is it sweet?
It's a little bit like a Granny Smith, but it's sweet.
Is it firm?
And it's firm, very firm. Good.
Is it early, late? When is it ripe?
It's September.
Oh, so quite early.
Now, do you know, one last thing before I fall asleep. We've got Ribston pippin. Okay, Ribston pippin, which is about probably 15 years old, more than that, maybe 20 years old. And we picked those in, I think it was about August the 20th. We then put them in a fridge, an ordinary domestic fridge, at 3 degrees. And we kept that throughout the winter. We didn't bother to wrap them. We didn't mind if they touched. Put them in the fridge. I'm still eating them now. Okay, I gave one to Tess, and she said, "Well, Dad, it's okay, but it's a bit sort of spongy. I like the flavour, but it's not crisp." Fair enough, but it's still full of nutrients, isn't it?
It's April. You know, that's got you through.
I mean, how many months is that? That's 8 months.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think that's extraordinary. I eat them at breakfast every morning. You know.
Brilliant.
Ribston pippin.
There we go.
I think so. That's another question we've got to tackle is the waste of apples across Britain. I mean, you just have to see them in Fordingbridge. You just drop on the ground and that's it. Nobody bothers. Whereas, we could refrigerate them and never have to import an apple ever again.
Well, exactly. Coming soon.
Coming soon, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Fantastic.
Well, this worked, hasn't it?
Much. Thank you.
This has worked, hasn't it, I think?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really enjoyable. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. Looking forward to seeing the book published and the program on the telly.
Yeah, well, what I've got to do next week is I've got to colour in all the fields with the different crop colours. So that's going to take me all week.
Yeah.
And then I can probably then get it scanned by my friend and send you a digital format.
Oh, dude.
You're clever enough to be able to look at.
That'd be great. I'd love to see that. All right, Nick. Well, hopefully we will see each other in the flesh soon as well. Maybe a trip.
Yeah, we ought to get a trip. I think a trip thing. And we ought to come up to you.
Yeah. Well, if you're heading over this way, definitely come and have a look. You're always welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well,
all right. Take care then.
Yeah, you too.
Be careful.
I'll see you soon.
What do I do to get out of this? Do I just press cancel it?